My husband gave away the $65,000 we saved for our IVF to his sister's failing bakery. When I asked him why, he said, "You wouldn't be a good mom anyway." I spent 2 weeks crying, then I called her landlord with an offer she couldn't refuse. 2 years later. My name is Angel, 39 years old, born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. My husband Brent and I met 10 years ago at a 4th of July barbecue hosted by my college roommate, Zara. He was the kind of guy you'd never expect to fall for, plain, bookish, a little awkward in crowds, but something about him was grounding. He wasn't flashy or overly charming, and that's exactly what I loved. He was stable, and after a string of emotionally exhausting relationships, stable felt like a warm blanket in a storm. We got married 3 years after we met, nothing fancy. Just close friends and family in a quiet ceremony at Eden Park overlooking the river. It was the kind of day where everything went right, clear skies, no drama, good food, and the kind of laughter that makes your cheeks hurt. For years, I'd look back at the photos thinking, this is the start of our real life. But real life has a way of testing you. Hard. About 2 years into our marriage, we started trying for a baby. At first, it was all excitement. We read all the blogs, downloaded the apps, did all the right things, clean eating, vitamins, temperature tracking, scheduled intimacy. But every month that passed without a positive test started to wear us down. Or, started to wear me down. Brent always had a weird detachment about it. He supported me in the way someone supports a coworker going through a tough project, not cold, but not emotionally invested either. Meanwhile, I was drowning in blood work, ovulation kits, crying in the bathroom at baby showers, and making excuses when friends asked if we were trying. After a year and a half of trying naturally and another 6 months of exploring every possible angle, our doctor gently suggested IVF. The number was staggering. Over $60,000, not covered by insurance. But we both agreed, if this was our shot at having a child, we'd find a way. So we did. We cut cable. We didn't eat out. We canceled vacations. I picked up extra shifts freelancing, and Brent did the same with consulting gigs. Every dollar went into a dedicated savings account labeled Family Fund. I even made a little vision board with a picture of a nursery, a calendar with our planned IVF timeline, and a tiny pair of booties thumbtacked in the center. That account, $65,000 by the time we were ready, wasn't just money. It was hope. It was mornings I woke up at 4 a.m. for blood work. It was years of silent heartbreak. It was everything. So when I logged into the account and saw only $1,800 left, I thought it had to be a mistake. I stared at the screen for a full minute, trying to breathe. Checked the bank history. A transfer, $63,000, authorized by Brent. 2 days ago. I remember walking down the stairs with my laptop, clutching it like it might fall apart. Brent was in the kitchen making scrambled eggs, humming to himself like it was any other Saturday morning. He didn't even flinch when I told him what I'd seen. "Yeah," he said. "I gave it to Myra." His sister. Myra had always been a hurricane in heels. The type of person who could walk into a room and make everyone slightly more anxious without trying. Her big idea this time around? A bakery called Sage and Butter. She'd opened it 6 months prior after quitting yet another job. No business plan, no culinary background, just a Pinterest board and a lot of Instagram captions about following your dreams. She'd asked us for money before. I said no, firmly. Brent had agreed. Or so I thought. She just needed a boost, he said, like he was talking about giving someone a ride, not draining our entire future. That wasn't yours to give, I said, my voice cracking. That was for our baby. You took away our chance. And then, he looked me straight in the eye and said the line that gutted me, "I don't think you'd be a good mom anyway." I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just turned around, walked upstairs, packed a small bag, and left. I drove around the city aimlessly for hours. Eventually, I ended up on Noreen's couch. She's my best friend, one of those rare people who will let you ugly cry in silence, then bring you a grilled cheese without asking questions. I didn't go home for 2 weeks. Noreen never pushed. She knew better. She just let me exist in her guest room in Oakley, tucked under a blanket with the blinds drawn, eating cereal out of the box and scrolling through old pictures of Brent and me, vacations, birthdays, holidays where we sat side by side pretending to be a team. But every time I saw that one picture, the one of us holding the ultrasound pamphlet from the IVF consult, I'd feel something start to rot inside me. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal. Spiritual. You don't just take $65,000 from someone. You don't just gamble away a person's future. You definitely don't look your wife in the eye and tell her she wouldn't be a good mom. You don't get to do all of that and still think you're the good guy. And you know what was the final straw? It wasn't the money. It was how fine he seemed. Not a single call. Not one apology. Not a "where are you?" Not even a half-hearted "let's talk." Meanwhile, Myra was online posting stories from Sage and Butter, thanking her angel investor, insert eye roll, showing off new kitchen equipment, and bragging about her comeback. Her captions? All sunshine and positivity. Manifestation works. Trust the universe. No, Myra. The universe didn't give you $65,000. I did. You just took it out of my womb and stuck it into a KitchenAid mixer. So I did what most broken women do when they've cried enough to flood a state. I got angry. And when I'm angry, I get quiet. Focused. The kind of focused that makes people nervous. I started doing research. First, I looked into Sage and Butter, the building, the business license, the lease. And that's when I struck gold. Myra didn't own the property. She didn't even have a proper lease. The shop was operating month to month in a building owned by a guy named Martin Alvarez, a semi-retired landlord who'd inherited the property from his dad. I found his number buried in a commercial rental listing. I called him on a Thursday. "Hi, Mr. Alvarez, my name is Angel. I believe you rent the space at 612 Ludlow Avenue?" He was gruff, but polite. Said yes, he did. "I'd like to make you an offer," I said. "Go on," he replied, like he was half listening and half watching a game show in the background. "I'll cover 6 months of rent. Up front. In full. Double what you're charging now. All I ask is that you let the current tenant go at the end of the month. I'll take over the lease." Silence. "Let me guess," he said finally. "You got beef with the baker?" I smiled. "Something like that." He laughed, then cleared his throat. "She's been late 3 times in 4 months. Place smells like burnt sugar and bad decisions. You got the money? I can wire it today." 2 days later, I signed the papers. 30-day notice was served. The building was mine. And I hadn't even decided what I wanted to do with it yet. The day Myra got the letter, she showed up at my door. I wasn't home, but Noreen said she could hear her yelling from the driveway. "You evil, petty witch," was apparently the opening line. By the time I got back that evening, she was gone, but her SUV had left tire marks all across the front lawn. Very mature. Brent called that night. First time in nearly 3 weeks. His voice was quiet. Not apologetic, just off. "Did you really kick her out of the bakery? Did you really steal $65,000? Long pause. "I was trying to help my sister. I was trying to build a family. I didn't yell. I didn't even cry. I think that's what threw him. He expected drama. Tears. Maybe a plea to come home. Instead, I said, 'You made your choice. I'm making mine.' And then I hung up. A week later, a box of his things showed up at Noreen's doorstep. No note. No explanation. Just his wedding band taped to the top of a pile of shirts. I dropped it in the trash without even looking inside. As for the bakery, I didn't know what to do with it right away. For a month, it sat empty, the windows papered over, the scent of burnt cookies and sugary desperation still faint in the air. I'd go in and sit for hours, just thinking. It became my weird little therapy room. Then one day, I saw a woman crying on a park bench. I was walking through Washington Park, just trying to get some air, and there she was, head down, shoulders shaking, a folder full of medical records at her side. I knew that folder. I had that folder. IVF. It hit me like lightning. What if this space, this failed, sugar-coated shell of my past, could become something else? Something real? I grabbed a notebook and started scribbling. Names. Ideas. Themes. It all poured out like someone had unclogged my soul. It wouldn't be a bakery. It would be a sanctuary. I called it the Willow Nest. It started small, just an idea scrawled into a half-used notebook, sitting in the middle of that echoey, empty bakery. But something about that name stuck. Willows bend, they don't break. And a nest? A place for fragile things to grow. I took a leap. I emptied what little was left in my personal savings and used part of my inheritance from my grandmother, something I'd been holding on to for when the time was right. The time was now. I contacted a local contractor, the same guy who'd remodeled Noreen's yoga studio. His name was Carlton, salt-of-the-earth type with paint-stained hands and a habit of humming old Stevie Wonder songs while he worked. I gave him a rough vision, a place that felt like a hug. Cozy lighting, soft chairs, bookshelves full of resources on infertility, adoption, IVF, loss. A quiet corner with herbal teas and snacks. A small, soundproof room for private sessions. And a community room for group gatherings, story sharing, and grief workshops. I want women to walk in and feel seen, I said. Carlton nodded once, and we got to work. It took 5 months. During that time, I threw myself into everything. Building out the programs, reading stories online from other women who'd been through similar journeys. I reached out to local doulas, therapists, grief counselors, and holistic care providers to create a network of support. I even met with a few local OB/GYN clinics who said they'd be happy to refer patients who needed emotional care during fertility treatments. And through it all, Brent didn't call. Not once. Not even when mutual friends began to whisper about Angel's new place. Not when my story got picked up in a local women's magazine. Not when the Willow Nest had its soft launch and the first group of women sat in a circle, passing tissues and talking about the weight of hope, disappointment, and shame. I stood in the back that night, watching them. I could barely hold it together. It was like seeing a part of me healed just by being in the same room with them. We weren't broken. We were tired. Grieving. But not broken. Sometimes, that's the difference between surviving and giving up, just having someone to sit next to you in the dark. The irony? I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I was just someone who got kicked in the gut and decided not to stay down. But somehow, I had created a space that was becoming something much bigger than me. Word spread fast, quieter than social media, more like whispered relief among women in waiting rooms. Women who'd been told to just relax one too many times, women who were sick of platitudes and looking for connection. Soon, I was running 3 support groups a week, and the cafe side of the space was busy all morning with women sipping chamomile and journaling or talking quietly. The place developed its own rhythm. Its own soul. And then something strange happened. I started to laugh again. Not the brittle, tired laugh I'd mastered over the last few years. Real laughter. The kind that makes your chest feel lighter. I caught myself humming while opening the cafe in the mornings. I started baking small things, muffins, banana bread, the occasional scone, and sharing them with the women who came in. It wasn't about impressing anyone, it was just love. Quiet, simple love. I went from barely getting out of bed to planting succulents in windowsills. And slowly, very slowly, I started to think about IVF again. This time, without Brent. This time, just me. It was terrifying. Being a single mom had never been part of the dream. But then again, neither had betrayal, or watching your marriage dissolve over a cinnamon roll business. I met with my doctor again. She was gentle, understanding. She remembered me. "We can do another round," she said. "It'll be hard on your body, and the odds still aren't amazing, but it's not impossible." She asked if I had support. I told her about Noreen, the women at the Willow Nest, my newfound clarity. I didn't mention Brent. I didn't need to. After a month of thinking, I said yes. I signed the forms. I started hormone injections again, alone this time. I'd come home from the cafe, prep the needles, take a breath, and give myself the shot. Every time I did it, I whispered the same thing to myself: "You deserve this. Your story isn't over." It was different without Brent. Quieter. Cleaner. There was no silent judgment in the room, no cold detachment. Just me, my hope, and the low hum of possibility. I didn't tell anyone about the IVF, not even Noreen, until after the embryo transfer. I remember laying in the clinic bed, staring up at the ceiling as they inserted the embryo. I said nothing. Just closed my eyes and prayed, not for a miracle, but for peace with whatever happened. 2 weeks later, I sat on my bathroom floor at 5:47 a.m., holding a test in my hand. It was positive. And just like that, everything that had been taken from me, the hope, the plan, the future, I took it all back. But I didn't gloat. Not yet. Because Brent was still out there. And as fate would have it, our paths weren't quite done crossing. The day I found out I was pregnant, I didn't text anyone. I didn't post anything. I just went to the Willow Nest early, unlocked the front door, and stood in the middle of the room holding my belly with both hands. There was nothing to feel yet, physically, but emotionally? I was a thunderstorm, quiet but alive. Later that day, I called Noreen. She knew something was up by the tone of my voice. "You either won the lottery or burned someone's house down," she said. I laughed, really laughed this time. "I'm pregnant." There was silence for about 3 seconds. Then a sharp gasp. Then crying, her, not me. She screamed into the phone like she'd just found out she was going to be an aunt, which, technically, she was. I was going to do this alone, but I was far from alone. The months that followed were some of the most emotionally layered of my life. I went from being completely unsure of whether I even had a future to building one day by day, breath by breath. My pregnancy wasn't smooth. There was nausea, exhaustion, and a scare at 18 weeks when I fainted while restocking tea jars at the cafe. Turned out I was dehydrated and anemic. Nothing serious, but it shook me. After that, the women at the Willow Nest basically took over. They created a rotating schedule of helpers. Someone would open in the morning. Someone else would clean up at night. I had people dropping off meals, prenatal books, homemade soups, even maternity clothes from women who had already been through it all. We were supposed to be a support group, but we had become something much bigger. A little family of survivors who carried each other through. Every day, someone would ask me if I'd heard from Brent. And every day, I'd shake my head. Truthfully, I didn't even know where he lived now. He'd cut off all contact except for one short email 6 months after he left. No subject line. Just, "Hope you're okay." Just wanted to check in. Brent. I never responded. I didn't need to. But then, right as my 3rd trimester rolled in like a tired freight train, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something told me not to. "Hello? Angel?" I felt the hairs on my arm stand up. It was Myra. Her voice sounded thinner. Weaker. Not the loud, self-assured chaos queen I remembered. "Why are you calling me?" I asked. She hesitated. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from." "I get that. I didn't know where else to go." I said nothing. I didn't trust my voice yet. The bakery's gone. I mean, it's really gone now. I lost everything. And Brent, he moved to Indianapolis. We're not even really speaking. She let the sentence hang in the air like she was waiting for me to offer her a tissue through the phone. I'm not sure why you're telling me this, I said finally. I guess I thought you'd want to know. That he's not doing so great. That we were wrong. I waited. You were right, Angel, she said, voice cracking for the first time. You were always the one trying to hold things together. We didn't see it. I couldn't tell if it was an apology or a confession or some mix of both. But it didn't matter. I wasn't angry anymore. Not because I'd forgiven them. But because they no longer had a grip on me. Good luck, Myra, I said softly. Really? But I'm not your safety net. I hung up. And that was the last time I heard her voice. The final stretch of my pregnancy was a mix of anticipation and disbelief. Some nights I'd wake up in a sweat, hand on my belly, terrified it was all a dream. Other days I'd spend hours prepping the nursery, folding onesies, wondering what kind of personality my baby would have. Would she have my stubborn streak? My weird love for thunderstorms? Would she feel what it took to bring her here? The women at the Willow Nest threw me a baby shower the month before I was due. No cheesy games, no over-the-top themes, just candlelight, soft music, tea, and letters. Each woman wrote a letter to my unborn child. They filled them with encouragement, humor, resilience, love. Every single one of them knew what it meant to wait for a miracle. By the time I reached 38 weeks, I was swollen, exhausted, and couldn't see my own feet, but I'd never felt more sure of myself. This baby wasn't a band-aid. She wasn't revenge. She was mine. She was me choosing to keep going, even when everything tried to convince me I couldn't. And right before I went into labor, something unexpected happened. Brent showed up. He didn't call first. Didn't text. Just showed up at the Willow Nest one Tuesday afternoon, while I was sitting behind the counter organizing a shipment of new journals. At first, I didn't recognize him. He looked older. Thinner. Like someone who hadn't been sleeping well for a long time. We locked eyes. I didn't say a word. He walked up slowly. Hi, he said. Why are you here? I asked. No anger. Just fact. I heard you're pregnant. I nodded. He looked down at the floor, like it was suddenly the most interesting thing in the room. I guess I just wanted to see it for myself, he said. See what you built. What you did. Again, I said nothing. He looked around at the cafe, at the rows of tea jars, the bookshelves, the cozy chairs. He looked like someone seeing color for the first time. I was wrong, he said, voice barely above a whisper. About everything. I watched him for a long moment. Then I reached down, rubbed the side of my belly where my daughter had just kicked, and said the only thing that felt true. Yeah. You were. Brent didn't ask to come back. At least, not directly. But I knew that look. It was the same look he used to give me when he wanted me to make a hard decision so he wouldn't have to. The same look I saw when Myra stood in our kitchen asking for money, and he turned to me silently, waiting for me to be the bad guy. This time, though, I didn't flinch. You can leave now, I said. He didn't move right away. I think he expected me to soften, to tell him he could stay for tea, that we could talk. That I'd give him something. But I had nothing left to give him. Eventually, he nodded and walked out. Didn't even look back. The door clicked closed behind him, and I sat down, heart calm, breathing steady. That was it. He had thrown away our marriage, our family plans, and all our years together, for someone who'd drain him dry without blinking. And now he was standing in a place I built from the ashes of that betrayal, quietly begging to be let back into something he no longer had access to. That was the revenge. Quiet. Final. And all mine. I gave birth 3 weeks later. A little girl. 7 pounds, 11 ounces. I named her Mira. Not after Myra, God no. Mira, from the Latin word for wonder and the Spanish word for look. Because she was the wonder I never thought I'd get to see. I remember the first time I held her, my whole body aching, my mind foggy, and still. I smiled. She was here. All the years of heartbreak, the failed tests, the night I packed my bag and left my own house, everything had led here. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was fighting anymore. I just felt full. The willow nest became even more important after Mira was born. Now, I wasn't just someone helping other women through infertility. I was a woman who had lived every corner of that story, and come out on the other side. Women would come in, see Mira tucked in her little wrap against my chest as I poured tea or shelved books, and they'd smile like they were seeing something sacred. Is she yours? They'd ask gently. She is, I'd reply. Took me a while to find her. The place became a symbol of possibility. And something else happened too. Myra tried to reopen Sage and Butter in another location, an old storefront out in Norwood. I knew because someone forwarded me her crowdfunding link. She wrote this big dramatic post about how she was rebuilding, learning from her mistakes, rising like a phoenix. She raised less than $300. Apparently, Brent had fronted her the deposit for the new space, what little he had left. And when it fell through, they had a very public falling out. She blocked him on social media. Again. Not long after that, I got a letter. From Brent. A real letter. On paper. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just rambled, really. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't know what he was doing back then. That he was scared. That he thought throwing money at Myra would solve things. That he thought I was strong enough to bounce back, no matter what. That he hoped maybe, one day, I could forgive him, not for his sake, but for mine. I never wrote back. Not because I was angry. But because I didn't need to. Forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back in. Sometimes it means letting yourself move on, without them taking up any more of your air. And that's exactly what I did. Today, the willow nest is growing. We've expanded to offer art therapy, yoga classes, and even a scholarship fund to help women with fertility treatment costs. Mira is 2 now, curious, loud, with wild curls and eyes that somehow manage to hold every single one of my feelings at once. Some days she runs up and down the cafe hallway with a crayon in each hand, babbling to the women gathered there. And they laugh, watching her like she's this little promise, fulfilled. I'm still single. Not because I'm bitter, but because I finally like the quiet. I built a life from nothing. I created a space for others to feel whole, even when everything felt broken. I became the mom he told me I'd never be, and better yet, I did it without him. He took our future and handed it to someone who baked dry muffins. I took my pain and turned it into a future that serves dozens of women, and a daughter who knows love every single day. And the best part? I never even raised my voice.